Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grandstand Sports Data, your go to channel for sports, statistics, and unbiased handicapping. In this video, we'll be presenting a complete guide on betting for your football Sundays. We're going to teach you everything you need to know to get started, from the most popular bets that handicappers place to how to actually handicap the sport on a fundamental and statistical level. We're also going to show some techniques, and then we're going to finally finish with bankroll management. So buckle up, get ready to hit the grandstands with us because we're about to take you one step closer to being an educated NFL bettor. So we're going to look at the types of NFL bets. We'll be covering the more popular betting types along with some alternative betting approaches as well. So look at this section as NFL betting 101. If you're not necessarily a betting rookie or 101, I guess is a better way to put it, then you could skip along to some of the more advanced slides. So now we're going to jump into the most popular NFL bets. We're going to start with point spread. And the point spread is a way to level the playing field in a game where one team is considered stronger than the other. In this case, Kansas City is the favorite, and they're expected to win by 6.5 points. If you bet on Kansas City to cover the spread, they need to win by 7 or more for your bet to be successful. On the other hand, if you bet Detroit, they can either win the game outright or lose by less than 6.5 points for your bet to win. So when analyzing the spread, you need to make sure to know key numbers. And these are a score or margin that is more likely to appear than others. This leads to certain point differences being more common in final game margins, so making those point spreads harder to change. Numbers like 3 and 7 are especially significant in this context. The most common margin of victory in the NFL is 3, and it occurs in 15% of all NFL games. Remember, when it comes to key numbers, you want to shop, shop, shop. So if you're a team or if you're a person who thinks that Detroit would have lost this football game by 7 points, you would want to shop for that Detroit number at 7 or by less than, or even if you just got the number in general, you've seen 6.5, you would want that 7 anyways if you want Detroit, because at the worst, if they lose by 7, you'd hit that push. And I always say a push is better than a loss. I mean, let's be real here. Next, we're going to move to totals, or some people regard these as over-unders. So the total is also known as the over-under. It's a combined score of both teams in the game. In this case, the total is set at 53.5. Bettors can wager on whether the actual total points scored in the game will go over or under these numbers. So if you believe this game will be high scoring and the total points will exceed that 53.5, you'd bet the over. If you expect a lower scoring game, you would bet the under. Next, let's finish with money lines. So the money line is a straightforward bet on which team will win the game regardless of point spread. The odds indicate the potential payout for the successful bet. So in this case, Kansas City, favorite with a money line of minus 285. This means that if you bet $285 out of your pocket and you win, you'd profit $100. On the other hand, Detroit is the underdog with a money line of plus 230. So if you bet 100 out of your pocket and they win, you'd profit 230. Next, let's look at other popular NFL bets. First, we're going to start with derivatives. And these include those same spreads, money lines, and totals that we mentioned, but it'd be for a specific time period, like quarters. You can do first quarter, second quarter. You can do halves, first half, second half. You can also do team totals. So if you want in Kansas City, say the line was set at 23.5, you think they score over, you can bet over in that specific team to score those specific points. Next, you can also do futures. In futures, these bets can be placed throughout the season, but just note that the odds change throughout the year. So what kind of futures can you bet on? You can bet on team regular season win totals. Kansas City, 10.5. Do you think they'll go over? Do you think they'll go under in terms of how many wins they'll have? Will they make the playoffs? Yes and no. Now, remember, these odds will be very different. Say for a team like Kansas City, their odds are going to be huge minus money because they're expected to win and go to the playoffs. Whereas no will be lots of plus money because the chances of them not making the playoffs is usually slim. Next would be division champion, conference champion, Super Bowl champion. You can bet on specific teams. Throughout the season, just remember odds change, and then you can do player totals. This means statistical totals: how many touchdowns, how many interceptions, uh, yards, yada yada. Next would be other popular NFL bets. So continuing, kind of finishing off, parlays. And parlays involve combining multiple bets in a single wager for a potential higher payout. So all individual bets within the parlay must be correct for the parlay to win, or essentially you have to go undefeated in that parlay. So here are a few types of parlay. You can even mix and match them. There's point spread parlays, money line parlays, and then totals, or also known as the over-unders. Teasers are next as well, and you have point spread teasers. Uh, let's start with teasers are just similar to parlays. They allow you to adjust the point spread or total in your favor for exchange and lower odds. So common types of teasers do include the point spread. And this is great for getting off those key numbers that we spoke about earlier to get a favorable line. And then next you have totals as well. Then you have props or proposition bets. Props are bets on specific events or outcomes within a game that don't necessarily relate to the score. So here's some of the more common ones. You can do player props. This is, maybe yards totals. You'll think over 285 passing yards for a specific quarterback. You can do team props. So this would be how many rushing yards as a team, how many passing yards as a team. Then you can also do the game props as well. I know I think maybe to the more casual sports better, you would a good game prop would be like coin toss in the Super Bowl. Now we're going to move on to NFL handicapping. And we're going to inform you about the fundamental and technical analysis, along with some stats to include in basic models. We're going to discuss the important factors of each type of the handicapping and how they can be used in combination to maximize your chances of success when betting on the NFL. So, starting the fundamental factors, you're going to look at coaching. And I break this down into four parts when it comes to coaching. You want to look at the play call tendencies. Are they aggressive? Are they conservative? Did it work? When they were aggressive, did it work? If it's a more style like Dan Campbell, where he's always aggressive, does it work? Does it not work? Same thing with conservative. Did it work? Did it not work? You want to measure all those types of scenarios when it comes to play calling. And I know some of you guys are going to say, well, the head coach isn't the play caller for the team. I got it. I'm saying if you're handicapping a football team, it has to come down to the coach. It's easier to handicap the coach and label it as his play calling because he is the boss and somebody who is making the play calls is working for that boss. Next, you want to look at game situations when it comes to coaching, or maybe better known as clock management. Clock management is real important when handicapping a coach. You could see that in maybe some teams that have a lot of success in ending drives with the score going into the half. What about vice versa? It also tells you bad things about a coach that's maybe messing up the clock and then his team isn't able to get those points in the half right before halftime. Those are some little things that you could see when handicapping and then kind of put that label if it's a good coach or a bad coach. What about the adjustments? Are they making adjustments? Do they make good adjustments? Do they make bad adjustments? Do they not make adjustments at all and they just go by a play script? This is also something you want to take a look at. Finally, what I like to look at also is timeouts and challenge usage. Are they making these timeouts and challenges early in the third quarter, and then by the fourth quarter it's a close football game, and that team doesn't have either or, and then a tough play is going to have to go the other way because of that. Maybe they don't got a challenge. Maybe they don't got timeouts and can't stop the clock late in that football game. This tells you about the coaching, and it kind of goes back to clock management as well. Next bullet is going to be player versus player matchup. You want to look at positional matchups in this to maybe first start off. Look at the strengths, look at the weaknesses. A good indicator of this is offensive line versus defensive line. What's the strengths? What's the weakness? Is a certain line, maybe the left tackle is out, and the quarterback's going to be running for his life if he's going up against a good defensive line. Something to take a note of when you first start. Also, you want to look at recent form. How well has this player been going? Has Justin Jefferson had 3 consecutive games where he's at 150 yards or more? The guy's going off. It's something that you have to account for when you're handicapping in sports. Historical matchup is also the final thing we would look at in player versus player matchup. Is there a certain wide receiver that just has that cornerback's number? Well, if you keep track of the historical matchups when it comes to player versus player matchups, you will have that edge. Next will be scheme matchups. How well does the spread offense work against a 4-3 defense? Well, if you track these, you might be able to identify an underdog. Say you say, well, this team A is not as good as team B, but the style that they run may be good against them. This is something that you will uncover in those scheme matchups. So style versus style. Next, and I used to push back on this when I was younger. Now that I've gotten older, it's actually kind of opened my eyes. It's the schedule, it's travel. It affects teams negatively because they cannot sleep in their own beds. Believe it or not, rest and injuries, they just can't do it as well and more efficient when you're on the road. Some people will say, well, you're getting paid the big bucks. You got to get over it. I tend to agree to a certain extent, but numbers work in favor of that travel. Teams' win percentage dropped 3.5% for every 620 miles flown. That's something to say about travel. Next would be rest. Since the talent gap is so slim in the NFL, one team not getting the proper rest compared to the other can weigh heavily on an outcome. This is why you see a lot of handicappers, they'll bet a favorite coming off of a bye. So since they are the favorite, they're projected to have the better players, better coaches, and then they have that one extra week of to heal and prepare. That's why you would bet a favorite coming off a bye. Next, for fundamental factors, we'll go with injuries. Just for injuries, I want to people freak out when they see a guy in the injury report and it says probable or questionable. Let me just get this out there. A player that's probable from game number one in the NFL all the way to today, so however many years, if a player is listed as probable, he plays 95% of the time. So if you see a probable next to one of your favorite players, there's only a 5% chance he's not going to play in that game, according to history. That's just according to history. Now, if he's labeled as questionable, he only plays 32% of the time. So there's a huge difference there. Difference between probable, a difference between questionable. This can be included in your handicapping. Now, if the player doesn't play, what's the drop off to the backup? That is something you need to account for. That's going to be huge in your next level investigation when you handicap in football games. Now, weather. We're going to look at wind precipitation and temperature. I'm no meteorologist, but I got the numbers here that will help you in betting for NFL. The games played with 20-mile-per-hour winds or more, they have great negative impact on the quarterback play. Always bet the under in these games. Okay? 20-mile-per-hour winds or more. Games in bad precipitation, this means rain or snow, do not have a negative effect on a quarterback's efficiency. So he's able to be efficiency, but you'll see production stats like touchdown passes and yards, they take a minor hit. Now, staying on precipitation, both rain and snow benefit the home team because of being used to the elements. This leads into dome teams. They carry the highest home field advantage. That's statistically. Their home field advantage is better. Dome teams. Temperature is very misleading. Always bet the over in cold games as the production usually never takes a hit. Now, technical factors. This is more of your stats, more of you model builders, or just getting started in a model. We want to take away the stats that don't matter. These are the stats that matter. You want yards per play on offense and defense. It's a great efficiency measurement to show how well a team moves the ball and prevents their opponent from moving the ball. Next is going to be passer rating differential. This has been a huge prediction indicator. 80%. That's right. 80% of all Super Bowl champions have finished in the top 5 in passer rating differential. And 50% of all winners finished in the top 2. Crazy numbers right there. Next is adjusted net yards per attempt differential. This is very much like passer rating. This stat also correlates well with wins as well, but it factors in sacks where passer rating does not. Next is going to be Pro Football Focus player grades. You're going to do this for help with that player versus player matchup. It will also help you determine the drop off from the starter getting injured to the backup. It works well for our models here at Grandstand Sports Data when factoring in our preseason power ratings by plugging in free agents acquisitions. That's another thing you can do as well. Finally, look at DVOA. This is defense adjusted value over average. It calculates a team's success based on the down and distance of each play during the season. Then calculates how much more or less successful each team is compared to the league average. Think of it like this: for teams to get to the end zone, they have to get first downs, they have to gain yardage. In this metric, it measures both of them. So we're gonna finish off our technical factors, and how we're gonna finish off the technical factors is with the 5 factors of football. It's pretty much the same as college football. If you checked out that video, it's efficiency, explosiveness, field position, finishing, and turnovers. Efficiency, you could look at score percentage differential. So take the score percentage of each team, and that's how you would factor efficiency. Explosiveness, this would be points per play differential. So not yards per play, but points per play. That's going to measure the explosiveness of a team. And then also do it for the defense as well. Next would be field position. Now, teams who have better field position, they have a better tendency of scoring more points, and then vice versa. I had a bigger pushback on this when I was younger, but the more I see it, it actually tells you something. Finishing drives is also another one. You can look at red zone percentage differential. There's also better statistics out there, more than just the red zone stat, but it is important for telling you how well a team can finish and how well a team cannot. Last would be turnovers. I like to look at turnover percentage differential. That's more of I like to know how many percent of drives finish in a turnover rather than just the total number of turnovers in their differential. So what about modeling? And what should be included in your NFL model? Well, first you have to collect your data or statistics. This is the base of every model. You could use any statistics you want, but I provided a good starter pack back in the technical factors slide. So all those technical factors that I mentioned, you have to use those in your model. Next, you should think about adding fundamental factors as well by putting a number on them. For instance, can you put statistical value on coaching? What about PFF player grades for player matchups and the drop off if a player is injured compared to his backup? You can also keep records on how well some schemes play against others. Track the number of miles a team is traveling and how many days off rest they are coming off as well. Remember, with your model, you must test, 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 and then improve, improve, improve. This will give you the best quality results. So, next, we're going to touch on the NFL betting strategies. And these are just the strategies of success on betting on the NFL. We're going to touch on the strategies like preseason research, regular season betting, and then betting in the postseason. So, what preseason research should you do? Well, if you're trying to get a better hold on a team, you should always look at last year's performance. You want to look at the players who are returning, what coaches are returning. Maybe they got a new offensive coordinator, maybe got a new defensive coordinator. Those are all things you need to take into account. The next thing you want to take into account is free agents. This is just like we've been mentioning about PFF. You can use PFF to see what players, help a team improve. Maybe they declined in a certain area, and just who acquired who, and knowing those player versus player matchups when players move. Finally, you can look at draft class, and this is a little bit harder to project because even the best guys in the world who are scouting these players don't even get it right sometimes. So it's very hard to do, but I'm not going to say that there's ways to do it successfully, but if you feel like that you need to watch football games on Saturdays to be better at handicapping on Sundays, it's something that you may want to do. Next is the beginning of the season. So this is when the season's kicking off. The whole goal in the beginning of the year is to see where the market has overvalued or undervalued certain teams. You want to identify these teams early and often as the market needs more data or games played to find a team's true market. So you want to see who's underrated, who's overrated. I bet you a lot of people that identified Cincinnati this year as being maybe a little overrated made a little bit of money, and it's because of this. It's because of seeing that. September underdogs. So if you bet underdogs blindly, you would be a losing better in the long run. But there is one month where betting dogs on the money line is profitable, and that's September. This is because the teams are starting at mostly full health and they're optimistic to start the season. Also, early in the season, defenses are ahead of the offenses, and lower scoring games benefit underdogs. Since 2003, in the month of September, underdogs have a 51.8 win percentage against the spread. If you filter the system toward dogs who missed the playoffs the previous season, the win percentage jumps to 52.6%. But remember, this is only for the month of September. Next is going to be regular season research. And regular season research is going to come down to division games. Most strategies, like betting underdogs or favorites, has proven to be a non-profitable approach because of the accuracy of the odds maker. So what should bettors look for? Divisional games, because the teams are more familiar with each other. Bet divisional road dogs. The public loves betting home teams, and it's unlikely to factor in divisional handicap, and so they overlook the fact that divisional road dogs cover the spread at a 53.1% rate. Now, divisional unders. When two teams are familiar with one another, this tends to benefit the defense, thus giving the divisional under bet a look. Since 2003, the divisional under has a win percentage of 52.8%. Last, home field advantage. It's already baked into the line. Most sports books use 3 as the home field advantage number. So why do we label home field advantage as overrated though? Well, home teams win percentage tends to be 57.3%. So yes, the home team tends to win more. But in the world of sports betting, so against the spread, and for betting purposes, the home team's win percentage is only 49%. That's why we find it overrated. How about betting the underdogs? Bet underdogs with low totals. So this is 44 points or less. The concept is a low scoring football game favors the underdog to keep the score close and then cover that spread. Next, public bettors suffer from recency bias. So some of the best sports bettors in the world know how to buy low on bad teams and then sell high on good ones. Look at this trend as the public writing off a team after absolutely getting waxed in the past week. Teams coming off a 14 or more point loss cover the spread following week at a 54.1% clip. Next, betting favorites. Switch what we learned in the first bullet. The concept is high scoring games. The favorite has a better chance to cover the spread. So favorites with high totals. Remember, 45 or more on that. Favorites coming off a bye. Betting favorites off a bye blindly may be beneficial as well. You can assume that favorites are better coached, have more talent, and benefit from a week of rest. Since 2003, betting a favorite off a bye has a 60.3 win percentage. Next would be a contrarian. Look at numbers such as betting against the public. Betting against the public can be very advantageous since the NFL is a popular sport to bet on. So it has a ton of public action. Look for teams getting less than 25% of spread bets. So this means that 25% or less of spread bets means that the public don't like them. And then since 2003, these teams have covered the spread 54.2% of the time. So let's move on to our bankroll management portion of the NFL video. We'll be covering the important topics of your initial deposit, sizing your bets, tracking your bankroll, and then setting bankroll goals. We'll discuss the importance of each topic and provide steps to help you manage your bankroll in a safe and responsible way. So let's start with the steps to managing your bankroll. Gambling on football can be fun and interesting way to, make some extra money, but it's important to make sure you have the right bankroll budgeting. And this is to protect your investments. Here are the steps to managing your NFL bankroll. So number one, you're going to determine your initial bankroll. Before you start betting on NFL, it's important to determine how much money are you willing to invest. This should be an amount that you're comfortable with and can afford to lose without any financial problems. Number two, bet size. Once you've determined your total bankroll, it's important to set a betting limit. This limit should be a small percentage of your total bankroll and should be used for all of your NFL bets. This will help to ensure that you don't overspend and can maintain control over your gambling. Number three, set assessment days. Once you've set a betting limit, it's important to manage your bankroll carefully. Make sure to track all your wins, all your losses, to ensure that you don't get overconfident or too aggressive with your betting. Four, consider long term goals. When budgeting for the NFL, it's important to consider your long term goals. While it can be tempting to bet aggressively on hopes of quick return, it's important to remember that long term success is often achieved through steady, consistent betting. Next will be sizing your bets. So, we're going to dive deeper into sizing your bets. So, after you make your initial deposit, what bet sizes can you use? Well, first is flat betting, which is when you bet the same amount for every single bet. Most gamblers will tell you that using 1% or 2% of your bankroll will make the most sense, and never bet more than 10 bets in like one session. Limiting your bets per session will minimize your risk of ruin. It'll help you preserve your bankroll and make it easy to evaluate assessment days. Another technique now is percentage betting. This is where you would take your total bankroll and break your bets into percentage form. If you use this technique, assessment days must be daily or weekly at most. If you start throwing around 5% plays after one day of losing, this can really puncture your bankroll. I cannot stress this enough. Your bankroll must be examined very often using this bet sizing strategy. Also, keeping records of your past results is extremely crucial when using percentage betting. Using past results will help you identify when a 5% or only a 1% is in play. It's not a strategy you can just wing and hope for the best. So let's move to tracking your bankroll. When tracking your bankroll, use anything you can. Use Excel, online documents, you can even use a notebook. But you must include on the tracking document the bankroll amount, the time period, and then all the days you're going to assess your progress. Assessment days should be placed far enough apart to evaluate your performance. These are usually on Tuesdays for the NFL. And since betting and handicapping should be held at a minimum on assessment days, there is no games on Tuesday, and it's at the end of the week of an NFL week. Use assessment days to ask yourself the following questions, though. Number one, how well did you stick to your bankroll or the budget? Number two, what financial results and betting performance occurred in this time? Number three, what is the current overall position? And then finally, number four, do I need to adjust my bankroll? I will say though, never adjust your betting amounts on non-assessment days. This leads to poor decision making. For the NFL, my assessment days are every Tuesday. So if I'm in the green for the past week, I do three things with my earnings. I'll save, invest, and spend. So let's say my initial amount was a 1,000. That's my bankroll is 1,000, and I profited 300 this week. I would break that 300 into 100 for savings, which is to add to my bankroll. So now my bankroll will be 1,100. I'd then invest $100 in investing, which would be me analyzing my model for any future opportunities. So, betting for a team to win the Super Bowl or their division or conference. Do I have good value using my model to make that bet? Finally, with the 300 profit, that final 100, I'd be withdrawing from my account, and I'd probably use this for, a dinner with my wife. And it's $100 extra that I didn't have. So what are the goals? Let's expand on those steps though. First and foremost, you should set financial goals. Know your why. Are you doing this for money? Fun. Or do you think you have an expert level in football? No matter the reason, you must set realistic goals that are smart. And by smart, we don't just mean intelligent, that should already be assumed. Smart means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time specific. I want to have at least 8% return on the NFL this season. Is that specific? Yeah, there's a real number there with a real deadline. Is it measurable? Yes, as long as you keep track of your rate of return over the season. Is it achievable? It's going to be difficult. It's very difficult. It's difficult to win 1% over a season, but you can do it. There's years where I would say that a guy is probably the average sports bettor does not make money in the long run, but he will have a season where he gets 8%. The next year might be minus 11, but he 8% is reasonable. Next is irrelevant. Yes, because it's your goal, it's not someone else's. It's not a tout's goal. It's not, anything like that trying to be, we make you a overnight millionaire or anything. So, yes, it is it's your goal, so it's relevant. Is it time specific? Does it have a deadline? Yes, it has a deadline at the end of the season. So a goal that is not smart would be I want to make lots of money on sports betting. I mean, everybody does. That's what you would want to do, but is what it is. So what would you do in your profits? And I mentioned in the previous slide, this is what I do in my profits. I save, I spend, and I invest. And with my savings, I'm going to add that to my bankroll and make my bankroll number larger. Next would be spending. And this is withdrawing my winnings. So I, take my wife to a restaurant or, whatever you do with your personal money, that's on you. But I withdraw a portion of my winnings, 33%. And next would be invest. So I'd leave it in my bankroll, but just note it as an investment that I want to look for a team that has a good future because futures, they will pay out for you if you have a model that is good and efficient. So in this next segment is going to be the NFL resources. Where are the best places that you can find all the information that we listed in here? Let's move on to it. Here are the betting resources. These are some that we like just based on football. Covers.com, tons of handicapping content. We have oddshark.com where we find most of our odds for the odds makers. But other than that, the handicapping content is improving every day, and it's great to look at. Teamrankings.com, good for situational trends and spread records. If you like sportsoddshistory.com, this is critical for NFL futures. And then profootballreference.com, this is I guess you would call almost the Bible for NFL stats. Football Outsiders is very good with power ratings, and this could help you with your advanced stats in analysis. So they have advanced stats there, they have analysis there, and this could work out for a good power rating model. PFF.com, mention them throughout the presentation, their stats and analysis. It's great for individual player grades. So, like always, would like to thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button for more helpful betting tips and analysis. Don't forget to like, share, and comment if you found this video helpful. Until next time, we'll see you guys in the next one.